This is PID Radio.
Gonna step up to the microphone, say it loud and clear. A better day is coming soon to get us out of here.
Welcome to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
And I am Sharon Gilbert, and I am in the newly renovated and so much improved, security unsurpassed bunker.
Yes, these new steel reinforced couches are a real...
Honey, you're giving it away. We reinforced our couches.
Well, it's where we spend most of our time when we're awake, so we need to have the extra support that writers so desperately need.
Absolutely. When you are shaped like a trapezoid, you require a great deal of comfort underneath. And I want to tell you that recently I had a gluteal blowout that just... It's the bane of writers. And I had not done the proper, stretches that morning, and unfortunately leaning forward to get my coffee, and the back went out. And I've been for a week and a half now on a heating pad and just lots of ibuprofen.
Yeah, seriously, Sharon has really been in a lot of pain the last week or so.
But I've continued to write and continued to research, and here we are. And our security is upgraded, of course. We have a wonderful fence around the house now. The perimeter is
secure.
safe.
Yes. And as we record this on June the 5th, 2005, we shift gears a little bit now and get to the topic for tonight, which we alluded to at least on the podcast feed that we put out on PID Radio.
We did. Those of you who've been following us every week, you know that every Monday morning you can rely on a fresh podcast right there for you with your morning coffee. Mm-hmm. However, unfortunately, last week we didn't actually record one specifically for the weekend. It was, of course, Memorial Day weekend. I was sort of out of it on my heating pad. But more than that, we had reached a point in the research for the topic of tonight, and we just really felt it wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So we decided to put up the wonderful broadcast that Derek did on KJSL radio here in St. Louis, and that's what was up for last Monday. And so now what we're doing tonight is we are taking stories that have been in the news, and more than likely you paid little or no attention to it.
Because the media has given little or no attention to these stories at a national level, or if they have, it's only been a selected part of the media, and maybe a part of the media that you don't normally pay attention to.
That's right.
The main media sources, the USA Today, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN.
Now, I have to stop you, honey. USA Today. Now, I'm trying not to disparage those people who are listening who consider USA Today the ultimate source of news for the day, but we recently were on a junket to promote one of my books, and we got the USA Today, of course, the complimentary one, and we were taking a look at it, and it was like looking at a coloring book.
Yeah, it's written for a 6th grade level, and frankly, most of the stories in it are aimed at the sensational. It's designed to attract the eye with a lot of color and small words and stories that are very short. It's been nicknamed McPaper, and there's a reason for it. It's not designed to be the source that you turn to when you're looking for really hard, in-depth news.
That's true, and we quickly put it in the McTrash.
Yeah, but the topic that we're dealing with tonight is one that you may hear stories like this from time to time, and usually when they're reported on, they are confined to the region in which they happen, so that at a national or an international level, you really don't get the information unless you go to the internet and really dig this stuff out to connect these dots.
Now, dot number one actually did make the news. I know that it was on CNN and Fox News. However, it wasn't there for very long. It was just barely a blip, and it was the story of a young man who has been given for some time been given access to the White House press pool, and his name is what's the first name? Gannon?
Jeff Gannon.
Jeff Gannon. Thank you very much. Remember those initials, JG.
Jeff Gannon was a reporter for an internet news site called Talon News. And back in March, it came out that Talon News was really a partisan news source funded by a big Republican party backer down in Texas. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as you can tell.
No, there are
what
lots of those out there.
Sure. And as long as you can tell the direction of the spin, because there really is no totally objective news source out there, you can take it, filter it, and decide whether it's credible or not. I think what got the rest of the White House news pool upset was that this Gannon, whose journalistic background was limited to a 2-day seminar, was somehow getting passes to attend White House press briefings on a daily basis. So some enterprising journalists started doing some checking and found out that Jeff Gannon was actually one James Guckert. James Guckert was previously the owner-operator of websites that solicited for clients as a male prostitute.
That's right. No bones about it.
Right. I mean, that's what just flat out. I mean, now you go to his website and he will not deny his past, but he'll say, look, this is what I was and what I am now is something different. And but that's not where the story ends. I mean, what the upshot of what happened there was that he was denied further access to the White House, and Talon News, the website, has shut down.
That's right. Now, this was Jeff Gannon. The story from 2005.
Right.
He was known as Jeff Guckert as recently as 1998. However, in 1987, he was known as James Guckert. In 1998, he was known as Jeff Guckert. Again, all these are the initials JG. In 1987, and folks, he claims to be.
Well, I think it is claimed that he is. He has not come out and claimed to be.
Oh, I thought he had.
No.
Okay, my mistake.
Now, see, this is the connection now. The upshot of this story and where it really gets interesting. I mean, beyond the obvious question of how did this man with his background as an online male prostitute make it past
I couldn't
the
get into
security
that
clearance?
press room, I'll tell you that.
Right. You've got to go through a lot of security checks in order to get access to the White House. And this is a question that was raised on left-leaning websites and blogs like the Daily Cause and Democratic Underground and so forth. And I'll admit, when I saw that they were the ones who were really raising the story and running with it, I kind of dismissed it.
You and I both said that.
Right.
Okay, this is a smear campaign.
Right. Smear campaign, tempest in a teapot. Okay, the guy's got an unsavory past, but people can change. Let's cut the guy a break.
Right.
Okay, well, here's where the story gets interesting. Shortly after he was outed, and maybe I shouldn't use that word, but anyway, after his past was disclosed, people began to speculate that maybe this James Guckert, Jeff Gannon, actually was born with another name, with the initials JG, Johnny Gosch, Gosch. And this is where the story gets weird.
Absolutely. You might want to take a minute and do a little search on Google for Johnny Gosch, Gosch. His mother is Noreen Gosch, Noreen. He is a name that came up when I was living in Nebraska back in
this
the
was
1980s.
In 1982.
Yeah.
During the early morning of September 5th, 1982, 12-year-old Johnny Gosch was kidnapped from a neighborhood in West Des Moines while he was delivering newspapers. It was a very quick abduction. It was very silent and apparently a professional job. Johnny Gosch has been missing for 23 years, going on 23 years. Somebody, and I don't know the chain of events or how people managed to connect this together, started looking at pictures of Johnny Gosch as a youngster and comparing them to the photos that were available of James Guckert and Jeff Gannon. The similarities between the 12-year-old Johnny Gosch and the now 35, 36-year-old Jeff Gannon, James Guckert, are striking. Now, that's not proof in and of itself.
That's true. However, Tom Flacco was told by John DeCamp that DeCamp believes Jeff Gannon and Johnny Gosch are the same.
Right. Now, Tom Flacco is an investigative journalist, has a website, tomflacco.com, that's Flocco, and you can do some checking on the stories that he's written regarding Johnny Gosch and kind of piece together the notes here. John DeCamp is a former state senator from the state of Nebraska. He was... After his term in office, he served 12 years in the state legislature in Nebraska. He was hired by the Republicans the Nebraska state legislature, to investigate a very bizarre chain of events that surrounded the Franklin Credit Union, which was based out of Omaha, Nebraska.
Right.
The Franklin Credit Union was owned and operated by a gentleman named Larry King.
Now, not the talk show host.
Not Larry King.
No, this is an African American gentleman.
Right.
Who totally different.
Right. The Franklin Credit Union and the Franklin Cover-Up, which is the title of a book written by John DeCamp, is a very interesting story, and it's a very disturbing story, and it's really at the heart of what we're talking about. Yeah, this broke in Nebraska in 1989. Lawrence King, who was the head of the Franklin Community Credit Union.
Actually, I think it was fall of 1988.
Okay.
November
when the
of
investigation
1988,
began.
Yeah.
At the time, Larry King was a rising star in the Republican Party. He sang the national anthem at the presidential nominating convention in 1988, at which George Bush Sr. was nominated for president.
Right.
He was eventually indicted, first of all, for a lot of money missing in the credit union. But what began to come out during the course of this investigation was that Mr. King was operating a pedophile ring out of his credit union in Nebraska, and not just arranging for young boys and girls to be provided as for sexual services to powerful men. He was abducting underprivileged children in and around Des Moines, the Iowa and Nebraska areas, to be used as part of this ring.
And not only providing them to the elite members of this ring, but also selling them at auction.
Yeah, reports from kids who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time and got caught up in this, that children were abducted, taken to Las Vegas, Nevada, and Toronto, Canada, and literally sold at auction. Now, we're not talking about something
like
that happened
cattle
in this country 200 years ago, or up until the 1860s. We're not talking about something that's ancient history. We're talking about things that were happening within the last 20 years.
Right.
And John DeCamp found out about this because he was brought in to investigate this situation by the state legislature in Nebraska. I mean, I can just imagine now, Nebraska seems like one of the most, and I'm speaking as an outsider, seems like one of the most boring states in the only thing I can think of Nebraska is a pretty good college football team and lots of corn.
And lots of pigs.
But apparently, this story began to break, and the legislature in Nebraska was really disturbed by this and said, okay, DeCamp had a good reputation as a straight shooter and as a Republican, and the fact that King was a Republican, and some of the names that were being named as clients of his were Republicans, he was brought in to debunk this thing as just being ridiculous.
This was during the Bush-Reagan administration, and this scandal went to the very top.
And we were going to put links to all of these articles, and we're talking about links to Washington Times articles and other, reputable news sources, not blog sources or anything like that. This is all documented. DeCamp began to investigate, and Senator DeCamp found to his horror that these allegations were true, that these were credible.
Exactly. This is a man who really did go in with the intention of A, finding the truth, but B, expecting that truth to be that it was untrue.
This is just, when you hear about this story, when I heard about this story, I thought there's just no way. This is, again, another smear campaign that's being directed at solid conservative Republicans by a radical left-wing fringe.
Exactly. At the time I lived in Nebraska, we've talked about this, there was very little information in the local press about it. You just really didn't hear any of this stuff.
Right.
Apparently it was squelched in the local press.
Well, and that's not surprising, because some of the names that were brought out in the course of this investigation were very prominent names in the Omaha area, including, and I shouldn't name names here until I look up the actual articles so that I don't get this wrong, but we had some very prominent names here, including the then chief of police of the city of Omaha, a gentleman named Robert Wadman, the former publisher of the Omaha World Herald newspaper, Harold Anderson, a former vice squad officer who later went on to head the Forestry Service in Nebraska, Eugene Mahoney.
Bear in mind, by naming these names, we are not indicting them with any particular charge. We are saying their names came up.
Their names came up during
in a negative way,
right?
During this investigation,
right.
And so you really should go to the links once you come listen to this. Go to the links from the website and do your own research.
And the names that I'm pulling out here are from a report that was written by a gentleman named Ted Gunderson, who was a former special agent in charge of the FBI. He was brought in to debunk John DeCamp, to show that DeCamp was way off base in making these wild allegations against these prominent citizens in and around Omaha and then in the Washington, D.C. area. And Mr. Gunderson came to believe that these charges were also true. And Ted Gunderson is now named by John DeCamp as one of his closest friends.
Absolutely.
So the reason this was squashed, you can speculate, was because the men who were named in this investigation had some clout.
Oh, yeah, and they had a lot to lose.
Right.
Things were going down in flames very quickly. This was a time when savings and loans were shutting down one after another after another. It was about the same time, in fact, that Neil Bush was involved in the savings and loan scandal. So you saw savings and loan scandals all over the place.
Right.
And because of that, it was almost like all of that was cover for this one that was involved with this terrible child pornography ring.
Right. What happened in the course of this, in what Larry King was, alleged to have done? Children, and in fact there were 80 of them who came forward in Omaha and began to name names. After the IRS conducted a raid on the Franklin Community Credit Union, the FBI and IRS together, this was in November of '88, you were right. What happened was that 4 of the first witnesses who came out, 2 of them recanted their stories under pressure. One of them was a young man named Troy Boner. His brother was, he died allegedly of suicide after playing Russian roulette.
Yeah.
His brother told John DeCamp, Troy Boner told John DeCamp that his brother was terribly afraid of guns. Another young man named Danny King just simply disappeared. 2 others refused to recant. One named Alicia Owen, and she was convicted of perjury. She testified before a grand jury that she had been forced to have sex with the then chief of police, and based on that, she was convicted of lying and sent to prison. She later spent more time in solitary confinement than any other female prisoner in the history of the state of Nebraska on a perjury charge. And that was her first offense. Now, where does all this connect to Johnny Gosch? You may be wondering.
And why would we even bring this up now? If you don't mind, honey, let me just bring in dot number 2.
Okay.
And why we're even going back in this. Some of you may be thinking, well, this is awful, but this is then. That can't be going on now.
Right.
Another item that has been in the news recently is something that took place in the South.
Yes.
And Derek knows well what I'm talking about. Why don't you tell him about it, honey?
Well, this is a story that just broke within the last couple of weeks out of Ponchatoula, Louisiana. There's a church called the Hosanna Church in Ponchatoula that's just outside of New Orleans, where 9 people have been arrested and charged with abusing children, having sex with children, having sex with animals, in the course of having satanic rituals inside the church that involved cat's blood. This apparently has been going on for quite some time, between 1999 and 2003. 9 people include the former pastor of the church, a gentleman named Louis LaMonica, a former sheriff's deputy in the area, and a number of other people that are connected with the Hosanna Church. Now, this is a story, again, that when you look at it from the outside, is horrible, but people will tend to take these stories and kind of file them away in a mental filing cabinet as just one more case of a...
That can't happen here.
That can't happen here. These people are disturbed, and it's sick, but that's just an isolated case of very disturbed people. Okay? Satanic ritual abuse of children just is not something that goes on.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's these people might have thought they were doing something for Satan, but it's not real. It doesn't really happen.
Now we go to dot number 3, and that takes place in the UK, where large numbers of boys, mainly from Africa, are missing.
This is a story that came out at the beginning of the month of May. And as we're going through here, I'm trying to keep up with my notes and not doing a very good job of it. But Scotland Yard admitted that in the course of investigating a really disturbing find about 5 years ago, in 2001, the torso of a young African boy was found in the Thames River, which is the river in London. All they found was the torso.
Right.
They suspected that it had something to do with a ritual sacrifice. And as part of the investigation, detectives went around to schools in the London area and asked for names of children who had just stopped coming to school. And detectives wound up with about 300 names altogether. They started trying to track down those boys to find out what had happened to them. Of the 300, and over the course of a year, they were only able to find 2. The other 298 are gone.
Right.
Generally, when they would go to the house, with the address that was on file at the school, the people living there would say, he went back to Africa. And inquiries made through diplomatic channels went nowhere. They couldn't find him. But the scary thing is that detectives told the reporter from the this was in the Independent,
right,
the Independent newspaper, that they suspect that the number of missing is actually in the thousands, the number of thousands per year.
So we have thousands of boys, possibly, we'll say hundreds, but possibly thousands of boys who are missing.
Yeah.
And they're tied to a torso found in the Thames. Now, add that to the fact that we have satanic ritual abuse taking place in the southern United States, in Louisiana, which at the time that you read the two stories, you might not connect. Now, bring in the third dot, and that's that there is a Washington connection to a child pornography ring. Now, fourth dot that we haven't mentioned yet. The death of Hunter S. Thompson.
Right. And this connects back to the Gosch, Guckert, Gannon case.
And to Satanism.
Hunter S. Thompson was named in the book written by John DeCamp on the Franklin cover-up. This was part of the testimony given by one of the primary witnesses who's still alive in the case, a young man whose last name is Bonacci, Bonacci. And in the book, the Franklin cover-up, Mr. Bonacci was, he was keeping a diary during his time that he was being put to use by Larry King in the pedophile ring. And he made some notes about some things that he was forced to do at a place in California that he wasn't sure of the location, but involved a lot of trees, and there was a large carved owl that was the center of all of the rituals and disgusting things that he was forced to do. He described, in fact, a snuff film in which he was forced to participate. He and another young boy named Nicholas were forced to have sex with a third young boy, and during the course of the activities, the boy was shot, and then they were forced, on pain of death, at gunpoint, to continue with these activities while they were being filmed after the boy was dead. And
wasn't the boy then taken, or the boy's body rather?
And then the boy's body was taken and was dumped into an area, and they were told that some men wearing hoods would take care of the bodies for them. It was believed that the men with hoods were part of a satanic group that would use the boy's body in a ritual that they would do later on.
That's right.
The strange connection to Hunter Thompson comes in, and we caught this when I was reading through this excerpt from the Franklin cover-up, and that Bonassi said that the director of the snuff film, a gentleman that they picked up in Las Vegas on the way to California, was a man named Hunter Thompson. Mm-hmm. Now, you may remember Hunter Thompson as the guy who was the self-proclaimed gonzo journalist and who passed away earlier this year in March, and it was reported that he committed suicide. Well, Thompson committed suicide, or
he was suicided.
Now, how did the timeline go? Just after the whole Gannon-Guckert story broke. The interesting connection is that shortly after this, a photographer named Rusty Nelson was arrested 2 days after Thompson's body was found. Nelson was formerly employed as a photographer by Larry King to take pictures at parties that were held in fancy Washington townhomes and condos for prominent men.
Right. And this was at a time, if I remember correctly, that King was earning about $17,000 a year, but he was living in a place that cost, what, $5,000 a month?
$5,000 a month, yeah. On a guy who, a $17,000 a year salary as head of the Franklin.
That's new math, brother.
Yeah, fuzzy. So we're starting to connect some things together here. We've got boys involved in a satanic ritual. Now, the area that we described in California with the giant carved owl is a place called Bohemian Grove.
Well, it could be Bohemian Grove. We cannot say directly that it is Bohemian Grove.
That's true.
But Bohemian Grove, where the Mucky Mucks meet once a year, is, and it tends to be the conservative Mucky Mucks, is indeed the site where a big owl
is located. Yeah, there may be another place in California that has a giant carved owl in it.
And guys in hoods. Yeah.
And guys in hoods who go there. And boy, if we find out about it, we'll be the first ones to know.
Right.
The Bohemian Grove is the other one that we know about, and so our suspicion is that that's the place, at least until we can.
Alex Jones comes out and he just says flatly that it's Bohemian Grove.
Right.
He has taken video footage of Bohemian Grove ceremonies, so I'm going to defer to him as more expert than I, but I don't think you and I can say definitively.
You're right. We're going to stick to things that we can prove with credible sources and evidence. But if you want to find Alex Jones's take on it, you can find a link to his show in our show notes. But the name Hunter Thompson did appear, and shortly after Gannon, Guckert, Gosch was revealed earlier this year, Thompson died. And the photographer who was closely associated with Larry King and taking pictures of famous men for use in blackmail, according to Rusty Nelson, was arrested and charged with what appears to be an excuse, a trumped-up charge. He was charged apparently with not registering as a sex offender in an area in which he wasn't even living.
Right.
So it would appear that some attempt is being made to shut him up. Some of the other interesting things, and actually scary things about this Franklin cover-up, the state of Nebraska had an investigator who was working for John DeCamp, who had called from Chicago and had indicated in his telephone call that he had found the smoking gun. His name was Gary Caradori, Caradori, and Caradori said flat out in the phone call to Lauren Schmidt, who was the chairman of the committee that was investigating the Franklin. He said on July 11th, 1990, "I have the smoking gun."
Right.
Yeah, and he was going to fly back to Lincoln, Nebraska from Chicago in his private plane. The plane got off the ground in Chicago, and a few minutes later, over the town of Aurora, which is just southwest of Chicago, it exploded in midair, killing Gary Caradori and his 8-year-old son.
Right.
The rear seat of the plane was never found. The first sheriff's deputy on the scene said when he got there to the farmer's field where the plane went down that the field was full of child pornography.
Right. Bear in mind, I honestly can't remember if you mentioned this, so forgive me if you did. Caradori was a Nebraska State Police investigator.
Right. He was working for the committee
right.
that was investigating the Franklin cover-up.
So this is not somebody who's likely to... in other words, we're not saying that Caradori was involved in pornography himself.
No.
The fact that these were on his plane does not indict him as being a participant.
In fact, the pornography was probably the smoking gun.
The evidence, the smoking gun, exactly.
Right. Because what happened after the plane was reported down, the FBI showed up on the scene with 3 flatbed trucks, cordoned off the area, took over the investigation from the police unit on the scene, told the deputy to never speak of it again, and put out a story that said the plane exploded on impact with the ground. Now, the farmer whose field in which the plane crashed said, no, it exploded in midair. Mm-hmm. The evidence that it landed in the field, presumably the pornography, was collected. The plane was collected by the FBI, loaded onto the 3 flatbed trucks, and disappeared. It did not reappear before the committee investigating the Franklin cover-up. It did not appear in any subsequent investigation of the crash of the plane or any criminal investigation. Also, the rear seat of the plane disappeared, was missing, presumably to cover up evidence that a bomb had been planted on board the plane.
Right.
Former CIA Director William Colby, who was a friend of John DeCamp. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, DeCamp was one of the investigators, the man who wrote the book, The Franklin Cover-Up.
Right.
William Colby was brought in by the legislature of the state of Nebraska to investigate the death of Gary Caradori, whose plane exploded. William Colby was subsequently found dead floating in Chesapeake Bay, which is near where he lived in Virginia. Mm-hmm. Apparently, it was a regular morning routine for him to go out in a, as I recall, either a one-man canoe or a kayak. He was pretty skilled at it, as I recall, but he died.
Right.
And was found floating, and again, it was ruled a suicide.
Right. Now, the same day that Caradori crashed, his wife received several telephone calls that she is certain were from Troy Boner.
Now, you remember he was the young man whose brother died by playing Russian roulette with a gun, the brother who was afraid of guns.
Right.
Yeah.
And Troy was terrified. He said Gary wasn't lying, referring to Sandy Caradori's husband. He didn't tell me what to say. What I told him was the truth. They made me take it back. They threatened me. You don't understand. They threatened me. They made me take it back. I was so scared. This is from a transcript that we'll put the link up there where you can actually read it. This is from the article by Tom Flacco.
Mm-hmm. And it's corroborated by Ted Gunderson, who came in to investigate the John DeCamp investigation.
Right. Then not too much later that same year, Troy Boner was going to provide the information to open court under oath that would blow the lid off the Franklin case and force a new trial for Alicia Owen, the woman who was in jail in Nebraska for perjury.
Yeah, and they put her in solitary confinement for perjury.
As Troy came into the courthouse, I'm reading from Tom Flacco's article now. As Troy came into the courthouse, he was immediately ushered into a private room by county judicial authorities. The hearing was delayed for 1 hour. Troy was in the room with a special attorney, quote unquote, and with other officials from the prosecutor's office, the very same prosecutorial team Troy was about to testify against. Troy leaned over and whispered to me, "Oh God, forgive me. They guarantee if I talk here today, they will put me away for 20 years. They told me I would be charged with perjury for my original testimony if I opened my mouth today in court. Look what they did to Alicia. Look what they did to my brother."
Yep.
DeCamp's 2005 edition incredibly reveals in late 2003, just before the 2004 election campaign started to heat up, Troy Boner walked into a hospital in New Mexico screaming, they're after me because of this book." The book Boner was waving was The Franklin Cover-Up. Boner was mildly sedated and calmed down and put into a private room for observation. When nurses came back to check on him early that morning, Boner was sitting in a chair, bleeding from the mouth and quite dead.
Yeah, people connected with this case who have talked about it have tended to end up dead. Two of the investigators, Gary Caradori, William Colby, former director of the CIA, somebody you would expect to have a little bit of clout himself. The reason that John DeCamp wrote the book, The Franklin Cover-Up, was to protect himself by publicizing it. He sold over 50,000 copies of this book, and we'll put a link to where you can buy a copy of this. It's reasonably priced for the size of the book, 400 pages for only $12, and it's very disturbing stuff because of the people that it implicates. Now,
and John DeCamp is a man who truly, I think, just wants his privacy, but
right.
So he did not write this book for notoriety.
And he's not writing it to get rich. If he was, he'd be selling it for $25.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
But here again, this just when we think the story gets as weird as it can go, it gets even weirder. The young man who had indicated that Johnny Gosch was part of this, Bonassi. Or actually, we didn't even get to that. Bonassi has confirmed to John DeCamp that Johnny Gosch was one of the boys that was abducted for use.
In fact, he says he helped abduct him.
And he helped to abduct him. But this is where it gets even stranger. A private investigator, and this story just came out about 2 weeks ago, and was only carried on a TV station in northeastern Iowa, covering Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, that area. If you look for it on the internet, you probably won't find it except archived in a few places. We've got a copy of the article from the TV station's website at the Peering into Darkness forum. And I'm glad we saved a copy of it before it disappeared down the memory hole. A private investigator who is working on the case for Johnny Gosch's mother, Noreen, has turned up a source, former CIA operative, who says that the CIA was actively involved in kidnapping these kids and providing them for King and his ring and for the powerful men in Washington who like to sleep with young boys.
That's right, so they could later be blackmailed.
Right. The CIA says that you could order one of these kids, and this is a quote now from the story. You could order one of these kids. It was $2,500 to $3,000 up front. Then you had the balance of another $3,000 to $3,500 or $4,000 upon completion. In some cases, depending on the circumstances, you can probably get them at the bargain basement price of $1,500. But most I think we ever saw was for the bondage and the freaky stuff, and that was an even $10,000. And these people would hand out that money like it was candy. So we've got Johnny Gosch being abducted off the streets of Des Moines possibly by the CIA, actively working to recruit young children into pedophile sex rings for pay. Not just for powerful men in Washington, but also for foreign buyers. Again, This young man, Bonazzi, says that he accompanied King to Toronto and to Las Vegas, where boys were sold at auction to foreign buyers who then flew them off to...
Foreign buyers wearing turbans.
To God only knows where. This is...
Bonazzi also says that these young boys were programmed, that their minds were messed with, and that they were programmed at Offutt Air Force Base.
Offutt Air Force Base, which is in Omaha, Nebraska. Strangely enough, where did George Bush fly immediately after finding out about the events of 9/11?
Offutt Air Force Base.
Offutt Air Force Base. We're covering a lot of ground here, and we barely have scratched the surface. You really need to dig in and read this information. It is very disturbing. In addition... we'll go into more here. I think we should take a break.
We should take a break, and we'll come back and we'll try to tie things up for you.
Yep, we've got more to come on this very disturbing edition of PID Radio next. In the 14th century, the Black Death killed nearly one-third the population of Europe. In 1918, the Spanish flu killed as many as 100 million people. The next great plague may already be spreading. Inspired by today's headlines, it's the Armageddon strain, the explosive new thriller from Sharon K. Gilbert. At a laboratory somewhere in the desert southwest, a secretive group has created a deadly virus for a single purpose: to eliminate 90% of human life. Standing in their way is Dr. Maggie Taylor, a woman broken by grief and alcohol, who must somehow find the strength to unravel the mystery of her father's death in time to stop the virus from being released. Infuse magazine says Sharon Gilbert has a talent for making you feel good, scared, on the edge of your seat, and dying for more. And Christian Fiction Review says Sharon Gilbert does a very nice job of building suspense and horror step by step. The Armageddon Strain from Sharon K. Gilbert, the newest release in the myth arc, The Ultimate Battle for Mankind. Available now online and at bookstores everywhere. We're back on PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
And I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are talking about some stuff that, you know what, if you're finding yourself a little confused by it, don't feel like you're alone, because the truth is that Derek and I both find this very, very confusing, and I honestly think that that's intentional.
Right.
It's got so many layers to it and so many aspects to it that appear to be just unbelievable. And gosh, this can't possibly be.
Yeah.
That, it's intentional.
Yeah, I mean, when you start making accusations like powerful men in Washington paying good money to kidnap kids out of the Midwest, I mean, this guy Larry King was taking kids from Boys Town.
Again, if you just came in, this is not Larry King, the talk show host.
Exactly. Lawrence King, who is the owner-operator of a credit union called the Franklin Community Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, in the late 1980s, 88 and 89, it came out that a lot of money was missing, and upon investigation, they found a lot of pornography there. Children came forward and said, hey, this guy's been using us and selling us for sexual services to powerful men in Washington, D.C. The stories made it all the way to the Washington Times, who reported that some of these young men were taken on midnight tours of the White House. In fact, one man, the gentleman that we mentioned, Bonazzi, was actually able to draw a diagram of the floor plan of the private residence area of the White House where nobody is supposed to go.
That is so creepy.
Yeah. Now,
you know, and frankly, that's really hard to hear.
It really is.
And I know that John DeCamp was recently interviewed on Alex Jones' show, and he said that he wishes he could go back and just undo it all and not know what he knows.
Exactly.
Because it's so much easier to have this idyllic rose-colored glasses image of your government.
Right.
And to find out that these are not only flawed individuals, but some of them are downright depraved.
Satanic.
Yeah.
And we mentioned now the CIA connection, which was reported by the TV station in Iowa. And so far, within the last 2 weeks, I've been checking on this. This story has not been picked up by any other major news source in the United States or anywhere else. But this is not the first time the CIA has been connected to child sex rings. Going back to 1987, Tallahassee, Florida, 6 starving, hungry, dirty children aged 2 through 6 were found in a park in Tallahassee, Florida, in the company of 2 men. Police investigated, found these 2 men connected to a group in Washington, D.C. called the Finders Group. Upon investigation and checking out their facility in the Washington area, which was in a warehouse, they found information that led investigators to believe that the Finders were securing children for, and I quote, unspecified purposes. But they did have a telex, which is, I guess, this is the pre-fax days. They had a telex from Hong Kong ordering the purchase of 2 children, which was supposed to be arranged through the embassy of another country in Hong Kong. There was a lot of data that was collected at the Finders headquarters in Washington on various child care organizations around the country. Do you really want to send your children to daycare tomorrow? In another area of this warehouse, according to the investigators' report, there was what appeared to be an altar, and around the altar were jars of urine and feces. They turned up a lot of pictures, pornographic pictures of children participating, apparently against their will, in the execution, disembowelment, and skinning and dismemberment of goats. Really sick and disgusting stuff. And when the Customs Department, the customs officials, and the Metropolitan Washington, D.C. police began to investigate, suddenly word came from on top that, this is now an internal CIA matter, and the investigation was terminated. So again, this is not the first time the Central Intelligence Agency has been connected to something like this. Now, we could get into MK Ultra and the mind control program started by the CIA in the early 50s.
And we will.
And we
I'd
will
like to
at
do
some
that
future...
the next show
right.
that you and I do together.
But that would take a lot of time to get into.
That does, and you may ask why Derek moved to that. We could get an MK Ultra because that is connected. MK Ultra is connected, and so is Aleister Crowley,
right.
and the whole OTO, Ordo Templo
Orientis, which is a high-level Masonic order.
It is. These are groups of men, primarily men. There are some women that are involved, but they're people who are intent upon ruling the world through power gained by satanic means.
Right.
They are trying to contact beings, and they may not even say. In fact, the OTO comes out and says that they're not necessarily trying to contact Satan. They're trying to contact elemental beings.
Right.
The elemental, and open up a gateway to bring them in.
Right, and it's primarily done through the use of sex magic, and that's magic with a K on the end.
That's right.
Aleister Crowley believed, and it is Crowley, by the way. You'll see it spelled Crowley, but it's Crowley. Believed that the greater the taboo that was broken, whether it be homosexuality or child sexual abuse or what have you, the greater the amount of magic that was generated. So you see these isolated stories such as Louisiana, and one that I'll tell you about in a moment in Toledo, Ohio, and you think, okay, these are just isolated cases of depraved individuals. They're disturbed. And what we're beginning to see is that there is a pattern here because these things keep happening. There was a report written for the government of the United Kingdom in 2000 which said that thousands of children were being ritually abused in the UK every single year. In fact, one of the expert witnesses testified and said that she was aware of children who were being born whose parents were keeping their names off of the official birth registries so that they could be, well, they were being born for sacrifice, specifically for sacrifice. Now, in Toledo, Ohio, there's a case that we're going to be following as the year goes on. There's a priest there who has been charged with the murder of a nun about 25 years ago, actually, Reverend Gerald Robinson. He is 66 years old now. The nun was found murdered in the chapel of a hospital in Toledo, and he was investigated at the time, given a lie detector test based on physical evidence found at the scene, but there wasn't enough evidence to charge him at the time. The investigation was reopened last year after some women came forward and went to the diocese and said, we were abused by priests in ritual ceremonies that took place in some of the parish churches around the altar. We were forced to have sex with the priests, and when the investigators, first the diocese began to investigate, and when they found what they found disturbed them enough that they went to the police after some internal debate about whether or not to handle it internally. But the Reverend Robinson was, in fact, arrested for the strangulation death of a nun at this hospital, and in addition to being strangled, she was also stabbed in a ritual pattern. Apparently there was a cross stabbed into her chest, and then she was posed to make it look as though she'd been sexually assaulted. And again, this is something where you could look at the story individually and say it's the work of a disturbed individual, but when you put it together with the ritual abuse taking place or reported by the victims there, the ongoing ritual abuse of children in the Franklin cover-up, the ritual abuse and satanic abuse taking place in Louisiana, reported in the United Kingdom. We've got a group that, and again, when you start digging through the news archives, you'll find story after story after story after story until there's just so much that it makes you want to throw up. It makes you sick. And you begin to realize that there is a pattern of ongoing abuse.
It does. And, I think probably now is a good time for us to wind down and just try to very quickly tie all this up. The reason that we're talking about this is really not to be sensationalist. That is not the purpose of Peering into Darkness Radio. We are trying to shine some light on what really is an evil, evil presence in our world. And if you believe that there is an evil presence, then the only way that makes any sense is if there is also a wonderful presence, and that is God. And no matter what these guys are doing, you know what? Jesus Christ beat him.
That's right.
He won the victory on the cross, and he is alive again after his resurrection, and he is coming back one day, and he is going to blow these people off the map.
Right. And as we've said before, we don't say that because we're wishful thinkers.
No.
We've got the historic evidence of the eyewitnesses who were there, and the evidence for the testimony of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, Jude, everyone in the New Testament who saw what they saw and reported on it is, when you consider it with an open mind, it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. It's undeniable. And one of these days, Derek will have a series of teaching shows that he goes into, because this is a subject that is near and dear to his heart. And he could talk for days.
Yeah,
I don't think our couch. I was giving him the keep it short sign, because my wonderful husband is really well studied on this. And you know what? If you have any questions about the Bible, if you're someone who maybe doesn't really believe it, someone who thinks, gosh, you know what, those are men that wrote that, and that's flawed, and this and that, we respect your opinion, and we would love to hear from you. And I guarantee you that Derek will respect your opinion, and he will write back, and anything that you want to say to him, he would be happy to tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah. But to back it up with evidence, it's
absolutely. We don't believe that arguing from emotion is the way to do it.
Right. This is a faith that's based on history. Sharon is a trained scientist and is one who is trained in the scientific method. She is one who knows how to look for evidence and for proof. I have a background as a news reporter back in my early days of radio.
And a degree in economics.
But I don't know. But we're not ones who are just going to take
geekonomics.
Yes, we're not one who's going to take information at face value without checking out the evidence.
No, we really
don't. That's why we really wanted to investigate this topic for an extra week. And boy, I know it's kind of a scattershot approach that we took tonight, because it is such a broad topic to try to draw this all together.
And the reason that instead of just focusing in on the Franklin cover-up only, the reason we brought in the other dots is because they are all interconnected. Just about anything that you see about missing children, serial killers, sudden, spree killers, shootings in schools. So many things that appear to be really dark in nature. And your first thought is, oh my gosh, how could anybody do that?
Right.
Well, you know what? They can. Anybody can, if you lean toward the dark side.
Right. We're all on a battlefield, whether you see it or not. It's just that those who are going out there without the protection of the Holy Spirit are going onto the battlefield without any armor.
If you want to have that armor, you can. All you have to do is admit that you're a sinner and ask Jesus Christ to come into your heart and have that personal relationship with Him. And you know what? You can. Read the book of John. It's a great book in the New Testament.
Yeah. And John, and then, of course, the book of Romans, which is a little more dense. Paul, being a trained in the law, was a little harder to read sometimes. A little more.
John is very loving in his approach.
Yeah.
Of course, we all know John 3:16, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him will not perish, but will have everlasting life. That's a goodie.
Make sure you check out the show notes for this week. We're going to put all the links to all of the evidence that we talked about tonight in there, so that you can read through this at your leisure and just prepare yourself, because some of this stuff is very, very dark.
That's right. Hey, write to us. We'd love to talk to you. radio@peeringintodarkness.com. Thanks for being with us tonight. Next week, we'll continue on the trail of the darkness in this world and shine a little light on it.
Remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
That's right. This is Sharon Gilbert.
I'm Derek Gilbert. Thanks for listening.
Good night.
Gonna step up to the microphone, say it loud and clear. A better day is coming soon to get us out